A new planet has been discovered. 3 races have come to harvest the bounty of this new world. But one race, indigenous to the planet, refuses to give up its precious resources. Prepare to cry havoc. Death and destruction is the only solution. Only one race will emerge victorious.
The setup for a 2-player game looks something like this. Now, here's the deal. There's another side of the board for 3 and 4 player. I've never played with that many, so I can only speak to the 2-player version of the game. But this is how it's set up. Tokens on the board. Everyone's got their pieces for the faction that they chose. After choosing one of the factions, each player is going to get a certain number of skill cards, their player sheet, their structures and tokens that go with them, as well as a reserve of units and a deck of cards. And each player will start with 4 units in their starting space on the board. The Aftermath expansion comes with some neutral structures that you will set aside, that way anyone can build these at a later time. The board will then be populated with different tokens and crystals that represent different aspects and features of the world that you are exploring. Separate terrain cards will be placed on the board as well that will be accessible for light deck building during the game. While the Aftermath expansion does come with leaders that have their own special abilities, making them even more unique than their opponents, the original base game player sheet actually has a convenient round order sequence and an action bar that shows you all the actions you can take on your turn, so for first-time players, definitely best to play with the original player sheet. Okay, now to go over all the phases of a round. First, you have basically the start of a new round, which involves turning over the next event on the score track to see what event might happen. Then you update initiative in case anybody played a card that changes the turn order, and then finally you refresh any skill cards that you might have exhausted on a previous round. Next, you draw 4 cards from your deck. Now we're finally going to move to the action phase. Over the course of 3 different action phases, each player in turn order will take 1 action. The main actions are to move units, recruit units, build or activate structures. Then you can also draw cards or you can activate scoring. The first 3 action types are represented by icons on the cards. First of all, you have the arrows that represent movement of units. So if you want to move, you can play any number of cards from your hand at a time, and you use one symbol. In this case, if we were moving, you would use all of the arrow movement symbols on all the cards that you played, and you will get that many movement points. And then you can move your units by either moving a bunch of units 1 or 2 times, or you can move 1 unit many times. After moving, if you move into a space with a purple token, an exploration token, then you're able to flip it over and get a bonus. But also, if you move into a space that has a Trog nest or Trog war party, you have to flip that over and resolve its effects, which typically involve adding Trog units that you'll have to fight and adding crystals, which will help give you the chance to earn more points over the course of the game. Having moved into a space that has a Trog token that makes Trog units appear, or moving into a space with opposing units, will trigger a battle. So the battles are not resolved until the end of the round, but each time a new battle is triggered, you'll take a token in sequence from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. to show which battles will happen first. So in this case, we'll put the 1 token, then future battles that are triggered will do 2, 3, etc. Using the recruit action, for each recruit symbol that you play on your cards, you'll be able to add that many units to your headquarters space. Using the build or activate action, you spend wrenches. So let's say you spend 3 cards with a total of 6 wrenches. You can build or activate a total of 6 points worth of wrenches. So you could maybe build a few structures in places that you already control, or you can activate those structures to use their abilities. Next, you can draw cards. So you'll draw 2 and shuffle 1 back into its respective deck. When you use this draw action, you can draw from your own personal deck, or you can draw from one of the terrain decks on the side of the board. The terrain cards offer some extra benefits. One, they have some special actions for battling, for combat, that your regular cards don't have, and they offer usually a lot of the same symbol for actions, so you can try to focus on being able to use certain actions. But the only key is terrain cards can only be used in battle if you're having a battle in a location featuring the matching terrain. The last action is to enable scoring. To enable scoring, you play a special card, and once you play that card, and everyone has one of these, you'll place a token in the enable scoring section on the board, and this will mean that you will get to score points for all of the locations that you control, and everybody will be able to score points for all the crystals that are in locations that they control. Once everybody has completed their 3 actions for the round, you will now move to the combat step. Each combat will be resolved sequentially, and the attacker will place their units on the combat board. There is a region control objective, a capture prisoners objective, and an attrition objective. And after the attacker has placed their units, then the defender will place their units. Each different objective accomplishes a different task. For example, region control is about winning the battle overall. You'll get 2 points if you actually win, and then you'll take control of the region. But the defender wins ties in this case. Then there's the capture prisoner objective, which allows you to actually capture one of your opponent's units. If you are the majority, defender does not win ties. You have to actually have the majority to win it. Then finally, there's the attrition objective. And the attrition objective, for each unit you have there, once you get to that point, you just kill an enemy involved in the battle. After everyone has placed their units, you're now allowed to play cards from your hand if they have a battle text. So you can actually take turns playing cards, modifying, either adding or moving your units on the combat board, so you can change things up once you see what your opponent is going for. You might realize, hey, I was trying to win at first, I see that I'm not going to be able to, maybe I'll go towards killing and try to kill all their units. So you can make last minute decisions to try to change your lot in this particular battle. And one thing to note, if you were to win the capture portion, you're actually able to capture a unit from the attrition objective, and since you go top down in sequence, capturing happens before attrition where you kill units, so you can effectively capture one of their killing units before they actually make the kill. Once the combat is resolved, whoever won the region control objective will get 2 points, and they will be able to stay, assuming they have any units left over. They'll be able to take control of that region. And everyone else, anyone else who survived, of course, you can only be fighting one other person. You can't have 3 people because you're not allowed to move into a region that has a battle triggered. So there can ever only be 2 people fighting. But whoever loses, if they have any units that survived, then they must retreat to a location that they control. At this point, you score for every prisoner that you've captured. So if you've been capturing a lot, you'll get a lot of points. Anyone who does not want you to keep doing that, scoring for those prisoners, they can actually pay 2 victory points to get a prisoner back. So that way they can keep you from getting points, and they can keep their unit reserves from depleting too much. And then finally, you will move to the main scoring event, which will trigger if someone played the action card that triggers enable scoring, or if it's the very last round. Then there will be an automatic scoring that's going to happen, and in that last round there's no point in triggering it because it's going to happen a certain way no matter what. And in that case, everyone scores for crystals in regions they control. Nobody gets points for regions they control. At this point, whoever has the most points wins. There are a few tiebreaker rules. Apart from that, that is the end of the game. So let's go back up and I'll tell you what I think. Okay, so here's the big deal. This has so many things that I like. There's great components. The miniatures are awesome. The card quality is great. Nice linen finish. The tiles are thick. The board is very simple and yet effective because everyone's close, so combat can happen in no time. I mean, this is a in-your-face, rush in there, blow people up kind of game. I like the fact that there's the, I guess you could call them NPCs, at least in a 2-player game. And in a 3-player game, the Trogs would also be NPCs, meaning non-player characters. But in a 4-player game, the 4th player will actually use the Trogs on the other side of the board, which I can't even imagine what that would be like. I wish I had experienced it, but I don't know that I ever will get the chance to try it to have an opinion there. But at least in a 2-player game, as I have played, I like the Trogs, the fact that there's something out there fighting you that's not just an opponent player, but the opponent player gets to control them, so there's still some intelligence going on in how they act, and that's all good stuff. But one thing that I really find interesting about this game is the turns. You have 3 actions per round. Well, maybe I should say it this way. There's 3 actions per round, but there's only 1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 5 total rounds in the game. So you have 5 rounds of 3 actions apiece. And I don't know how that seems to anyone on the outside who hasn't played it, but I can tell you after playing it several times, that is not many rounds. I mean, there's a reason why this game has a 1 to 2 hour playtime, which is pretty short for this type of dudes on a map game. They force it to be quick, and interestingly enough, the expansion eliminates a certain rule before, which this would be hard to pull off. But if someone ever got so many points that they actually their point marker got past one of the little event tokens, you would actually reveal that event immediately, and it would shorten the length of the game. The expansion removed that, and I'm glad they did, because if that actually did happen, you would make this game even shorter than it already is. And for me, that's actually the weakest portion of the game, is how short it is. Now, I know for some people, that might be what they're looking for, a game that's quick, relatively quick for this type of game. But for me, I always feel as I'm playing, and I think, man, I never got to build as many structures as I wanted to. I never got to really, get somewhere. But I think that's kind of the point of this game. I think the idea is you land on this planet and you start blowing each other up, and then it's over. I mean, it's just a quick, dirty hit-and-run kind of game, which is very, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of another game that I want to review but have not reviewed, Kemet. Because Kemet is similar in the sense that it's made to be quick in combat happens all the time. You're very close to each other in this, although in Kemet that's partly because you can teleport and just zoom right over to where people are. But even apart from that, the map is kind of like this. The areas are big, so you can jump around and move across the board very quickly. But the thing is, this just feels almost like they're purposely restricting you in what you can do. And like, for example, the Machine Army, the red color, they've got 5 different structures to choose from in their setup. That's a lot of structures, and there's no way you're going to be able to really make use of all of those structures. It gives you a lot of options to do on your turn, which is cool, and I guess that's the idea. In this game, you're given lots of options, not a lot of time to use all those options, so you have to decide what's best, what's most effective. Now, that opens up a big window for strategy and tactical play, which I really like. That's the best part about this game. The strategy and tactics are huge. The game is designed to make you think with limited time, limited resources, what's the best thing to do in the moment. And you're able to, even if you don't use a whole action on enable scoring, which that's another whole issue, you have to use an action just to enable scoring so that you can get a lot of points. And you don't have many actions in the whole game as it is. But the cool part is combat gets you points. Killing units, winning the battle, and even capturing units. So they give you that option. You can say, hey, I want to go for crystals and then try to enable scoring as much as I can. Or you can say, well, although enable scoring, you have to remember, everyone scores their crystals, you get the benefit of your territories. So you only want to enable scoring if you have more crystals or enough extra territories than other players to make it worth it. So, but you can go that path. You can go the path of enable scoring, or you can go the path of killing and combat to try to get your points that way, or both if you can really somehow manage to make both work, which is, again, very hard. You have such limited time and resources that it's very hard to go down both paths. So in this game, And, there's different, there's 3 different main factions that I can play with. I can't play with the Trogs without 4 players. The blue team, which are the Pilgrims, they actually are more of the kind of hold back, make crystals appear to help them get points. They're probably the least aggressive they're definitely the least aggressive of the bunch. The machine, the red, is probably the most aggressive, although the humans, they're fairly aggressive too. So depending on, in a 2-player game, which 2 of the 3 you pick will definitely affect the game. Because if you have yellow and red, they're going to be going head-to-head trying to crush each other. If you have yellow or red against just blue, then you're going to have blue wanting to kind of maybe get defensive and protect themselves against the onslaught of either the humans or the machines. So the setup is going to be different because of that, who you have battling. Of course, if you had a 3-player game, you'd have all 3, and you'd have to have the red and yellow players trying to decide how much they want to try to, focus on keeping blue from doing their thing, harvesting crystals and being more pacifist in their gameplay, although they can be aggressive if they wanted to, but they don't have as much of a need to. It's just, I don't know, it's just a fascinating game, giving you so many different options and lots of strategic, play available, and yet not enough time to really... And then the deck building. You have deck building in this game, very light deck building because you have only so many turns. You're only going to be able to draw cards, use the draw to, get rid of 1 action so many times. In fact, I think I made a mistake in my actual explanation. You're supposed to draw 2 cards from the same deck. You can't draw a deck from your deck and then draw 1 from one of the terrain decks. You have to draw 2 from the same deck, which means if you're going to get from the terrain decks, you have to choose one of them to draw from. But you don't have that many actions, so you're not going to be able to do a lot of deck building. You're going to get a few cards from maybe some of the terrain decks, and that's it. So you're not going to really deck build a lot, which means that it's almost not deck building because you're going to cycle through your deck a few times and then it's over. So you might be able to cycle through a few of those cards once or twice, and then the game's going to be at its end. So again, something that I really like. I like that deck building element in a dudes on a map combat game, but then you don't get the satisfaction of really working it, and it's just, I don't know, it's just, so without belaboring the point, I'm just going to go ahead and go to my opinion. I'm going to give this an 8.5 out of 10. 8.5 because I like the tactical and strategic elements so much. It has so much of what I'm looking for. I like being able to build structures. I like being able to have interesting the combat in here is very interesting. How it's very deterministic. The fact that you have placement in these different objectives, but then you can play cards that can surprise people and make things shift in a big way. That is awesome. The combat is amazing. The card use, the fact that they have double use. Sometimes you have battle uses of the card, or just the action symbols, or one of them's for enable scoring, or one's for changing or one of them allows you to change the initiative, player order on the next turn. I mean, the cards are great. The map is great. The way scoring works and trying to collect crystals is great, and the fact that combat can happen so quickly. It has so many things I like, but it would be higher if I felt like I had more time to really explore all the different things this game has to offer in one game. But it's great. I should not complain too much because this game it's got so much going for it. It has so many things that I like. I just wanted more time. I just wanted more turns, which you could, I guess, house rule the game and say, oh, don't worry about the events. Just make you could make it last longer. But I think that would kind of maybe ruin the spirit of the game in a sense. I don't know. But either way, it's a good game. Just understand this. If you want a quick, just get in there, quick and dirty, dudes on a map game, this should be right up your alley because there's not many that are quicker than this that I know of, that are this epic in scale. But if you like the drawn out, like for example, Twilight Imperium, I like a lot. It takes forever, but I like it a lot. I like it more than this because I like the time that you have to develop, explore, and build yourself up. I enjoy that so much. I enjoy the time to build and strategize and build armies, and here it just doesn't happen. That keeps it from being up there with some of my favorites. So just FYI, that to me is the determining factor as to whether or not you'll like it. If you like dudes on a map and you like quick, go for this. If you don't, if you want the long drawn out stuff like Twilight Imperium, Forbidden Stars, etc., you might not want it as much. But that's that. That's my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.